Have you ever met a trans person? Have you ever talked to a trans person? Have you ever asked them about their experiences?
So 1 year ago, we released a video announcing Shaye's social transition. And in that video, I interviewed you. I asked you a bunch of questions. So I thought it would be fun to do that again 1 year later. So I've got some questions for you. She doesn't know what I'm going to ask her. You ready for this?
I hope so.
My first question. When you opened up about socially transitioning, what was the reaction that you anticipated people having?
I knew a lot of people would give me a lot of pushback just because I've seen other trans people open on the internet and you just read the comments and people can be pretty awful. But in a weird way for me, it was like knowing that I was going to be public about it was kind of like a complete surrender and free fall to just be like, oh well, come what may.
Yeah. Well, and we had announced that you experienced gender dysphoria. That's kind of how we first talked about it. Mm-hmm. But we both suspected that people would react differently to you talking about actually transitioning, right?
Yeah, because that first video talking about leaving our faith, that's where I was. I had gender dysphoria, but it wasn't like a social transition was in play, right? It was just more of something that became so clear to me that was real and something that all the major medical associations recognized. And in some ways, it was just like wanting to educate the world to say like, this is something that is a lot of people are going through.
So that's the way you anticipated people acting. And what has the reality been compared to what you expected?
The reality is there's a lot of people that give me pushback, but
yeah.
I think what's been the most beautiful, like healing thing is like stepping into my true essence and seeing people on the other side ready to love me and accept me for who I am. So that's something that it's worth all of the hatred, is to see people that I feel like essentially have woken up and they recognize the constructs that are created by the patriarchy and all these other issues that can just see people for who they are and say, just be you, because that's them doing the same, right? It's them living their lives authentically, so they want others to do the same, and that's kind of the beauty of really just being you.
Yeah, and maybe that's most powerful for people who experience gender dysphoria or who are queer in some way, but it also affects people who don't identify as queer, just think more open-mindedly. So that's been a cool thing to see. Okay, what has been the hardest thing about this past year?
Oh, by far healing from my surgery on my face, for sure. It's just a mental challenge of just like trusting the process, so.
Yeah, Shaye didn't even present like at all prior to that surgery. Like you really felt like you needed that to have yourself in more alignment. And so there was a physical healing, but I think there's been like an emotional and even spiritual process that was tied to that healing.
It's just, I mean, so many people talk about this when you transition, but it's like a second puberty. So for me, it was like, one, trusting that my face would eventually heal, the swelling would go down. But then two, it's just like redefining a core part of how the world sees me.
Yeah, that's a process. It's a process for everybody. But that unique situation, I think really like, it brings it to a head so much. And there's so much pressure with the pushback that most people don't have for being them. Okay, what has been the most rewarding thing about the past year?
I think other than just being myself is seeing other people maybe having courage to do the same because of us opening up about our story. In many ways, it feels like it's filled the void of what religion was for me, right? Which is about, love and service. But
yeah, that's a really interesting point, because you're not saying being trans is your new religion. What I'm hearing you say is that trying to live boldly as you feel you were created to be is a new kind of being in the world. Mm-hmm. And maybe it omits a frequency that can be a force for positivity in some people's lives. I mean, some people don't see it that way, right? But it is a purpose where maybe our purpose before was really like prescribed by the religion that we lived.
Yeah, it's not about being trans as much as about letting go of the shackles of confinement that comes from these social constructs created in society. And so people so often tell me like, oh, that must have been so hard for you. But I often say, well, there's things in your life that you can relate to in that same way. whether it was from maybe living a life that are more against the enmeshments of how your family structure works and, showing up in a certain way, or maybe it's a different career path than what others expected for you. It's just breaking down those barriers. So for me, it wasn't just being that I'm trans. That's just a label. It was just me being me, and whatever that looks like for other people.
Well, and it's interesting too, because like when you say something about like our story inspiring people, it's you kind of realize it's really not you at all. Like you're just on a path and you're walking on that path a certain way, and then other people are walking along and are trying to figure out how to walk on their paths. At least I don't feel like identified, like, yeah, we're pretty awesome, and people, you're just like, well, we're walking on this path, and then people need to find a way to walk on their path.
Yeah, that's one thing that's changed for me a lot, and maybe you feel the same way, but like I feel like within our religious structure of how we lived our lives, it was about saving people and giving them something that they didn't have. I don't view it like that anymore. I view it more as like helping people maybe just to wake up to them. So I don't view people as needing saving as much as just sometimes it's just a reminder that, hey, it's okay to be you.
Okay, next question. What is something you wish you'd known about this process a year ago?
That it's a process. It's so incredibly hard to go from living your life in a certain way to all of a sudden showing up in ways that feel more authentic, but also realizing that there was things along the way that kind of molded you to be who you were before. And it's more of like learning new things, but also unlearning things that maybe were a hindrance to me.
Yeah, and I imagine that's not just like worldview stuff, like what you were talking about earlier. That probably has to do with like being in the world and like social situations. Do you feel like all of that is just way more process oriented?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's still things I want to do, right? And it's not, I guess the best way to describe it is realizing that there's not one way to be trans, right? So it's like finding the parts that feel most authentic to me. So it's like I take a couple steps forward and sometimes I take a step back and go, okay, like, is this important to me, or is this maybe because of how society thinks that I should show up as a trans woman? I mean, for example, there's still things I want to do. Like I want to work on my voice, but like I'm scared to like jump into that too fast because I want to have that feel authentic to me as well.
Yeah, well, and in 1 year, I just think about everything that's happened in 1 year. And then also, frankly, the process of sharing it is a lot too, right? If I think about all the other years of our marriage, like we're coming up on 18 years of marriage, which is crazy. Never has there been such an eventful year. You've accomplished a lot in 1 year.
But of course, so have you, and so
Yeah.
Amanda needs a video next.
Oh. That's cute. It's trying to be my real self. What is something that has surprised you in your first year of transition? Maybe just like something funny you never thought of before, or...
Probably people asking me how tall I am, because I never got asked that for some female. So, which I like, because in some ways that's seeing me as female.
No, well, and when it happens, it seems like both times it's been, I want to say Costco, but whatever, we'll be out. And it's always like a sweet older man who's like, how tall are you, darling? Mm-hmm. And Shaye will be like, I lost my voice. But she is 6'2".
Yeah, I look at Amanda, I'm like, please fill in.
Well, because it startles you, right? And they're being very nice. Mm-hmm. Same thing happens when someone like compliments you on your outfit. Right. Sometimes you're just like,
I mostly don't care. It's like we all have egos, right? So, but it's in those moments of where it takes me off guard that sometimes I'm like, Amanda, help, say something. Like, it's so funny. And I know one day I'll laugh about that. In fact, I'm laughing about it right now. I'm telling you guys. So.
Laughter is the best medicine. This is my last question. What are you most excited for in the future?
I think it's just moving into a new stage of not having my focus on my transition. And that's something, I know it's important because there's a lot of emotional labor with that, but I have a beautiful family, I have you, and I have memories that I want to recreate, and we have been creating them. But just getting to a space of just feeling fully comfortable in my skin and embracing this magical life that we have here. So,
and I don't know if anybody, it's probably a small percentage of the population that feels completely comfortable in their skin, right? But you're absolutely right that I would imagine in the following years, there'll be more normalcy and just a more like general sense of comfort. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, and one thing that people don't see, of course, is that we're we're sharing our journey and with a lot of emphasis on this aspect of our lives. There are other things that are happening in our lives that we don't necessarily show.
Yeah, we're raising kids, and our kids are sometimes part of our content, but we kind of keep them a little bit insulated from some of this. And yeah, we're just a normal family in really a lot of ways, but this aspect of our lives is something that a lot of people don't understand very well. And so it makes sense to...
Yeah. We try to contribute to society. We pay taxes. We
Yes.
vote. We take care of our kids just like any other normal family. So
Yeah, I'm a teacher. I get up and go to a campus
true.
and talk about books.
She does. Yeah, I think one comment I see a lot that I find a little bit comical is like, don't try to normalize this. And it's just so funny to me because it's like, it's actually kind of a compliment. Because it's like people are feeling threatened. Because what they really mean is what? Is not to humanize our experience. And they don't want to use that word because that sounds a lot harsher. But that would be my hope from us putting our content out there, is to show people that we're just another family, has struggles like anyone else, but our family might look different. But hopefully with time, like previous issues with other minority groups, we'll start to see some of the areas where we created harm, and hopefully we can do better.
And just to add to that, you start to look at people's experiences and you stop like categorizing it in the same way. Like when your family is the one that's in a category all of a sudden, because we didn't really have that before. We were mainstream, white, apparently heteronormative, everything. You start to realize, oh my gosh, I don't really understand at all what it's like to be somebody else. And there's all kinds of misconceptions about different choices people make or different walks of life. And you start to just really like love humans and not see them as like their categories they're in, and just try to be curious about their experiences.
Yeah.
Well, I love you. I'm so proud of you. It's been a year of a lot of courage on your part. Also mine in some ways, but especially for you. And we've gotten through it.
Well, I obviously, cliche as it sounds, I couldn't have done it without you. So
We did it.
Yeah.
Teamwork makes the dream work. See ya!